Welcome to CinemaNet. Today we're diving into a thrilling mystery. Is it just a story or a carefully planned murder? After the murder, the entire house becomes shrouded in suspicion. The story kicks off by introducing us to a crime novelist named Harlan Thrombey. Harlan is incredibly wealthy, living in a luxurious mansion surrounded by a large family. On this particular day, Harlan is about to turn 85, and he invites his entire family to celebrate his birthday in grand style. Everyone enjoys the party, but when the housekeeper enters Harlan's room the next morning, she discovers his lifeless body. There is blood everywhere, flowing from his neck. Soon, news of the murder spreads quickly, and time begins to pass. Before you know it, a week has gone by. We then meet Harlan's caretaker, Martha, who was close to him after his death. Martha is deeply worried because she was very close to Harlan. Then, Harlan's son, Walt, calls her. He tells Martha that she needs to come home because the police will be arriving the next day to interrogate the entire family, as well as all the staff working in the mansion. Martha agrees to join them. The following day, two detectives arrive, Detective Elliot and Detective Wagner. They begin by questioning Harlan's eldest daughter, Linda, who remains calm and answers all their questions. Soon after, we meet a private detective named Blanc, who also starts asking questions one by one. Next, it's Linda's husband, Richard, who is questioned. The detectives ask him a series of questions. Then, a woman named Johnny is called in. She is the widow of Harlan's late son. The detectives interrogate her as well. After Johnny, Harlan's granddaughter Meg is questioned. She is quite young, but is still asked many questions. Finally, Walt is called in, and all of his actions are questioned. Everyone is questioned twice. Elliot interrogates them the first time, and Blanc returns to ask additional questions the second time. While Elliot believes Harlan committed suicide, Blanc is not convinced by that theory. He doesn't believe the story and continues to probe everyone. Blanc then reveals to everyone that Harlan's death occurred on the night of the birthday party, and he believes that one of his family members is responsible for the murder, or at the very least, knows the truth behind it. Blanc starts to investigate the relationships within the family, and soon discovers that Harlan had very strained relationships with most of the people in the house. Blanc then speaks with Martha and learns about Richard. Martha explains that on the day Harlan died, Richard went to his office because Harlan had discovered Richard's affair. Harlan had a video of Richard's infidelity, which angered him greatly, as Richard was cheating on Linda, his own daughter. This argument lasted a long time. As Martha recounts this, she begins to vomit in the middle of her story. This happens whenever she tries to lie, revealing that she's hiding something. Now, Blanc starts to make his list of suspects. The first person on his list is Richard, making him the number one suspect. The second suspect is Johnny, who had stolen a large sum of money from Harlan. Harlan found out about this and decided to cut Johnny off, ensuring he would never steal from him again. This infuriated Johnny, leading Blanc to suspect him. The third person Blanc suspects is Walt, who had also fought with his father. Harlan was so upset that he removed Walt's name from his publishing company. This only adds to Blanc's suspicions, placing Walt as number 3. The fourth suspect is Ransom, Linda's son. On the night Harlan died, Ransom had an argument with him, and Blanc finds Ransom's behavior to be particularly strange. Blanc then speaks with Detective Elliot and re-examines everything he's heard from the people he's interrogated. He listens carefully to all their statements, trying to connect the dots, figuring out who's lying, who's telling the truth, and what each person's motive might be. Blanc recalls the night of Harlan's death. After the party ended, Martha took Harlan to his room. At this time, Johnny was meditating and suddenly heard a noise, something falling to the ground. Concerned, she went to check on Harlan. When she arrived at his door, Harlan opened it and assured her everything was fine, explaining that his game board had simply fallen. Johnny then returned to her room. Next, we see Linda and Richard. Richard had already fallen asleep, but Linda couldn't sleep. In the middle of the night, they noticed Martha and Walt smoking outside. Walt's son, Jacob, was with him. Walt saw Harlan coming down the stairs and warned him not to come down at midnight. Harlan then went back to his room. Blanc starts to piece everything together and thinks deeply about his suspects. He questions Elliot about Ransom, and Elliot confirms that Ransom had already left the party and wasn't at the house in the middle of the night. Ransom had fought with Harlan and left soon after. Blanc continues to question everyone, and after a long discussion with Elliot, Blanc starts to feel that something is wrong with the entire story. According to Elliot's account, there's no clear suspect who could have killed Harlan. Blanc and Elliot agree that only one person might be able to reveal the truth: Martha. She was present that night and could provide crucial details. They begin talking to Martha again, and she shares more information. Martha explains that when she went to Harlan's room that night, she was giving him his medicine. During this, the medicine fell to the floor, and in the process of helping him, Martha gave Harlan an injection. However, she soon realized she may have accidentally overdosed him. She told Harlan they should go to the hospital, but he refused. Harlan said he wouldn't survive the trip, and that if they went to the hospital, Martha would be stuck in a long investigation. Martha insisted, saying she didn't care about the consequences and would call someone from below. Harlan stopped her from doing so. Martha begins to panic, trying to leave the room. In her haste, her foot hits Harlan's, and she falls to the ground. This is the sound that Johnny heard earlier. When Johnny comes upstairs to check, Harlan lies and tells her that the game board had fallen. Johnny then goes back downstairs, and Martha's panic grows. Seeing this, Harlan tries to calm her down and says, "I know your mother is an immigrant and she doesn't have all her documents. If anything happens, your entire family could be in trouble, and I don't want that. So do as I say, leave the room, come back by car in the middle of the night, park it where there are no CCTV cameras, and then enter through the back door." Martha does exactly as instructed. She walks up the stairs, but a ladder breaks along the way. She then goes to Harlan's room, puts on his clothes, and starts coming back down the stairs. This is when Walt sees her and tells her to go back. Now we realize that Walt didn't see Harlan but Martha in his clothes. Martha changes clothes again and begins descending the stairs. As she does, she encounters the oldest woman in the house, who sees Martha and becomes startled. However, after a moment, the woman speaks, mistakenly thinking it's Ransom, not Martha. This gives Martha a brief moment of relief, and she quickly returns upstairs. Martha has now told Blanc and Elliot her version of events, though she has left out key details, particularly about the medicines, to avoid being a suspect. Blanc encourages Martha to assist him in gathering evidence, as crucial evidence is missing, such as the camera footage. Blanc tells her he needs her help, as she knows the house better than anyone. Martha agrees, hoping to eliminate all evidence that could tie her to the crime. If she stays close to Blanc, she believes she can control the situation. Meanwhile, Harlan's lawyer arrives to read Harlan's will. During this time, Jacob makes a significant discovery. He recalls overhearing a conversation between Harlan and Ransom while sitting in the bathroom. When Harlan mentioned the will, Ransom became angry, shouting and threatening Harlan. Everyone in the house is shocked by this revelation and questions Ransom. He becomes defensive and starts misbehaving with them. Outside, Blanc is seen with Harlan's dog and a broken piece of the ladder that Martha had discarded. Blanc is shocked when he sees the broken ladder piece and quickly runs off with it to fix it. Meanwhile, the lawyer reads Harlan's will, and the family is left in shock. Harlan has transferred all his property to Martha. The moment they hear her name, everyone becomes furious, as Martha had always been just a servant to them. Up until that point, they had treated her decently, but once they learned this, their attitudes changed. They call her a witch and curse her, accusing her of deceiving her father. Martha tries to leave, but the family follows her, demanding that she return all the property. Just then, Ransom arrives in his car, gets Martha inside, and drives her to a remote location. They stop at a diner, where Ransom begins to manipulate Martha, slowly convincing her that she knows more about Harlan's death and might be the key to unraveling it. He uses this information to intimidate her, making a deal. If she wants to be free, she must give him all the property. Ransom now knows what transpired between Martha and Harlan, and he uses this to pressure her. Martha returns home, but the Thromby family is relentlessly after her. They are plotting ways to reclaim the property and begin calling her one by one to harass her. The situation worsens when news outlets report that Martha has inherited everything, and media channels swarm outside her house. Fearing that her mother will be exposed as an immigrant, Martha tries to avoid the media by sneaking out through the back door. Soon, she receives a threatening call. The caller warns her that if she doesn't return the property, they'll inform the police about her mother's immigrant status, potentially landing her mother in jail. Terrified, Martha checks her mailbox and finds a toxicology report from Harlan's case. She takes it and goes to Ransom, asking for his help. She explains that she doesn't know who sent the report, but she believes someone else knows what happened in the room that night. Ransom reassures her and suggests they visit the laboratory where the report was created. However, when they arrive, they discover the lab has been set on fire. As they stand there, Martha's phone receives a message with an address. Before they can act on it, Blanc spots them and they begin running. Blanc pursues them, and after a tense chase they catch up to the car and Ransom is arrested. Ransom confesses to Martha that he spoke to Ransom's grandmother, who had seen Ransom coming down the stairs the night of Harlan's death. This information is crucial for the investigation, and it's enough to justify Ransom's arrest. However, Blanc assures Martha that he will drop her off at home. Martha stops along the way and heads to the location where the blackmailer has called her. As soon as she enters, she finds another servant from the house, her hands tied. Martha approaches her, and the woman tells her that she had found the toxicology report, but no one had poisoned her. The woman is dying because of an overdose of morphine. Martha tries desperately to save her, but the woman dies in the end. Devastated by her death, Martha goes to Blanc and confesses everything to him. She tells him she plans to tell her family the truth because she no longer wants to hide the reality. Before confronting her family, Martha gives Blanc the toxicology report, which contains all the details. Blanc begins reading the report, while Martha prepares to confess in front of everyone. But just as she is about to speak, Blanc intervenes and stops her, revealing that he has discovered something else. He explains that the toxicology report shows an abnormal amount of morphine. Someone must have injected it from the outside, and that person is none other than Ransom. Blanc continues, explaining that after the argument with Harlan, Ransom had left the house but stopped his car, returning through the back door to Harlan's room. He switched the medicines that Martha had intended to give to Harlan, spiking them with an overdose to ensure Harlan's death. He framed Martha by making it look like she had given him the lethal dose. Blanc then points out that Martha hadn't changed the medicines, Ransom had altered them. He removes the label from the medicine bottles, showing that Martha is innocent. Blanc further explains that no one knows who hired him, but it was Ransom who had orchestrated it all. After seeing the news reports claiming that everyone believed Harlan had committed suicide, Ransom hired Blanc to target Martha, knowing she would be blamed for the crime. Ransom's plot was well thought out. After the funeral, he went back to Harlan's room to return the medicines to their original state. However, one of the servants witnessed him, realizing that Ransom was also responsible for Harlan's death. This servant then sent the toxicology report as a form of blackmail. When Ransom found out that the servant had sent the report, he feared it might expose him. So he went to the servant, administered a lethal dose of morphine, and tied her to a chair, ensuring she would be dead by the time Martha arrived. Ransom also set fire to the lab, destroying any evidence that might point to him. However, he didn't know that Martha had kept a copy of the report, which was now in her possession. He intended for her to be trapped in the death, making it appear as though she was responsible for everything. Blanc then confronts Ransom and lays out everything he knows. Ransom laughs, fully aware that everyone knows the truth, yet he insists that no one can prove it. No one will be able to prove that he was the one behind everything. Just as the tension builds, Martha receives a call from the hospital, informing her that the servant who had been dying has survived. Martha is overjoyed because if the servant survives, she can testify against Ransom, having witnessed his actions. Upon hearing this, Ransom flies into a rage. In his fury, he begins confessing to everyone, explaining why he did everything and cursing every member of the Thromby family. He admits that he wanted revenge on all of them. After revealing this, he approaches Martha, telling her that no one can save her now. He insists that she is still going to jail, as all the evidence is stacked against her. Hearing this, Martha begins to panic and ends up vomiting on Ransom's face. Ransom, however, soon discovers that Martha was lying. The servant did not survive after all. In a twist, Martha's lie about the servant's survival prompts Ransom to confess his own crimes, which the police have recorded on their phones. All the evidence is now clearly pointing to him. Furious, Ransom grabs a knife and attempts to attack Martha, but as he lunges at her, he discovers the knife is a fake. This creates another charge of attempted murder, which the police can use against him. They quickly take him into custody. Meanwhile, the rest of the family watches in disbelief, shocked at the turn of events. Martha then speaks with Blanc and asks him when he first figured out that she knew about the bloodstains. Blanc reveals that he knew from the very first day when he saw bloodstains on her shoes. He suspected she knew something, but he was sure she wasn't the one who caused the bloodshed. As Blanc leaves, Linda goes to Harlan's room and discovers a letter from her father, in which Harlan reveals that Richard was cheating on her. Linda processes this in silence, while the police escort Ransom out of the house. The rest of the family now turns their attention to Martha, who is standing on the balcony. The way she stands, with newfound confidence, signals to everyone that she is now the true heir to Harlan's estate. The Thromby family is left homeless with their legacy gone. The film ends here.